This podcast contains swear words.
Hello and welcome to Talking Shit with Tara Cheyenne, a podcast about art making, creativity, not giving up, and living well in the process. I'm coming from the perspective of a performing artist, but the themes and issues discussed here apply to all of us, whether you consider yourself an artist or not. Are you not maybe you are. You're creative, and life is a creative act. I'm your host, Tara Cheyenne Friedenberg, choreographer, actor, dancer, writer, and educator. Whew, that's a lot of things. No wonder I'm tired. Living on the unceded ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations on the west coast of Turtle Island. Okay, before we launch into today's very special interview, I would just kindly remind you to like, rate, 5 stars, and review. I really like Talking Shit with Tara Cheyenne. Share with your friends. It really makes a difference. It helps people find the podcast. So if they're like, I really want to hear some amazing dance artists and theater artists talk about what inspires them, they might find us. So that really helps us. And if you have the means and motivation to make a donation, however small, however big, go to the upper right-hand corner of www.taracheyenne.com to make a donation. And we'll also put that link in the show notes. Really do appreciate it. Okay. So before we launch into my interview with the Mary-Louise Albert, I just want to say that talking to Mary-Louise was beyond delightful. Mary-Louise and I met first in 1994 when I was fresh out of university doing my first kind of big professional gig with Judith Garay, who was one of my professors at Simon Fraser University, an amazing artist, an amazing choreographer. And Mary-Louise was just coming back to dance after having her second child and an incredible dancer. Oof. Sorry you didn't get to see her perform. But if you did, you know what I'm talking about. So years have gone by and we've both lived many lives in between. Mary-Louise was the artistic director of the Chutzpah Festival at the Norman Rothstein Theatre here in Vancouver for many years, presented so many amazing shows and amazing artists. And now she is living in Sointula, in Sointula, BC. Okay. You drive way up the island, you find Malcolm Island, you take a little ferry from Port McNeill to Malcolm Island. I've never heard of Malcolm Island. I know, I hadn't either. To Sointula. It's a little place with about 600 people. Originally founded by Finnish communists in 1901. I know, fascinating. Now, the commune, the utopia that they set out to establish, didn't stick, unfortunately. But there is residue, I think, of that intention in Sointula. Mary-Louise invited me up there as part of her company, BC Movement Arts initiative, to bring artists up to the island, to those smaller communities. She's presented some really amazing artists up there, Oro Collective, Company 605, and on and on. And I was like, this is amazing. She said, just come up. There's this beautiful hall. It's called the Finnish Athletic Hall. Beautiful old building, 1931. So you're going to hear the sound of this building. So the recording, we met live in person and had this interview, which was a huge treat. And you're just going to hear the reality of that. So the echo of the room, some sounds. Mark Stewart, our incredible editor, producer, did an amazing job making us sound good in that very special magic place, Sointula, the Finnish Athletic Hall. Before we launch right into it, trigger warning, everyone. We talk about eating disorders, body dysmorphia. So please take care of yourself. So here we go. Mary-Louise Albert. I've known you since 1994. I want to say?
Well, it would be close to that because my daughter, Rebecca, second child, was born in 1991. So yeah, like 2 years later is when I did my first dancing gig after that. And you and I were together in that.
We were. And I was like fresh out of university. Oh, we would smoke cigarettes, driving down the hill.
Yeah.
Oh. I remember that piece.
Yeah, it was a hard piece. It was Judith Garay, and she really likes precision.
Yes.
And I also remember she really liked counting.
Oh, did she ever?
Remember all these sort of counts.
Yes.
And I'm quite, I have lots of faults, but, also as a dancer, though, very musical, right? So it was more rhythms for me and not necessarily having, coming in by a certain count, a 37, a 40, a 40, whatever. And I just remember, but it made sense, right? Because there was all this group work that we would have been bashing in. Yeah. I just remember all the counting and also remember the really great atmosphere.
It was fun.
It was fun,
So at that point, you had your kids, but let's go back. Let's go back in time to where did you train, and did you know that you wanted to be a dancer from a very tiny person?
Well, from a tiny person, I always liked to move. And I always liked music, right? So I would say, there is a dancer and it's a soul, right? But, I grew up in a very working class neighborhood in Rexdale, Ontario, which is in Toronto, which is now it's a great place, but very working class, Italian and Irish and just this working class town. And my parents too, right? They worked very hard and they were paycheck to paycheck. But when I started to really show that I really liked to move and dance, my mom and my granddad made sure I went to ballet class, right? My brother got hockey and sports and all of that. And I got my ballet. And my first teacher was Janet Baldwin, School of Ballet, right? He was one of the old, beginning guards of Toronto dance. Boris Volkov, right? Was her husband. But she brought her school out to a couple of suburbs, and Rexdale was one of them. And so I, was showing to her that there's some talent. And my mom, in order to help pay for the classes, would do administrative work for her Rexdale thing, right? So I was with Janet Baldwin's school all the way through to when in grade 12, I did my Advanced World Academy.
Oh, yes, your RAD, yes.
RAD, and then I went to Ryerson for a year. And so that was my beginning training.
The good old RAD.
All I did was ballet class.
Yeah.
We would have every now and then like a jazz class, which was fantastic. Then a couple of times we had year-end shows, right? I would have to say that all this choreography young students are doing, I've kind of now mixed feelings sort of about it, right?
Oh, yes.
It's sort of where you can be a real great high school athlete in your big glory days or the university or high school. And that's what you do. And then it kind of ends and it goes.
Right.
Because I know that as a dancer, like you can go your whole career and never have a solo. Or never have your parts. But the expectations of what a lot of dancers will think is out there once they finish their training might be a little different, So anyway, I didn't have that. It was all ballet and then going to Banff a couple of times. And that's when, I'd get, okay, here's a modern teacher. Here's this, this is interesting.
Wow. Okay. Here's a question for you. When I did my RAD, I think the last one, Margot Fontaine signed my RAD.
Yeah.
Did you have her?
Yeah, it would have been Margot Fontaine, I think. I mean, I can look back, I've got them.
I know.
But it was this real, you look at those grades, especially what they call the majors, right? Elementary, intermediate, and advanced. And you're kind of also seeing this history of this British dance, Dame somebody rather.
Yeah.
And it was when I was doing my major, it was every 2 years. So it's important to pass.
It was,
to move on. So I went to Ryerson for a year and enjoyed the dancing part, was kind of a bad student. I was not the least bit interested in any of the academics. And I remember theater class, we had to read this Shakespeare play and I hadn't read it. I was just writing my exam, just guessing and just doing that. And the paper came back all in red, really?
Oh, you wanted me to read it? Oh.
It was funny, yeah. Yeah, then I apprenticed with like Grand Ballet for a year. And that was really interesting. It was good. And again, we're going way back. We're talking like in the 70s. And the pressure of morphing you into something maybe that you aren't as a human being, whether it's physically or mentally. It's an interesting process when you're the type of dancer where an institution like that is liking you.
Yes.
But it's going to be very dependent on what you look like a year later and what you have to do, right? But at the same time, liking you. I mean, we're talking about weight, heavy duty, weight very, sort of thin. And so it's like you look back at that and it's like, well, if that is the system, it's best not to include somebody that isn't physically looking the way you want them to look. So there was kind of mixed stuff, around that. And that was for a year, but kept dancing every time, even with, it was like, I wasn't ready to quit, taught for a while.
Yeah.
And, met up with Peter Bonham in Ottawa, then moved to Ottawa. And, he really wanted me in the Groupe de la Place Royale then. And Jean-Pierre Perrault was his co-director, but I was too balletic for him. So it was like, it's not going to work, because they both would have to agree. But Peter set up the audition for Anna Wyman when she was coming through Ottawa. And she was looking for one dancer, and he set that up. And I got that job, and that's what brought me out in 1978 to Vancouver.
Wow, I love it. So that was your arrival on the West Coast, and you never left.
Yeah, because I was close to my parents and brothers too, but you start to form as an adult. So I would have been 23, 24. Then. Yeah.
You were with Anna Wyman for a while, hey?
I was with Anna Wyman from 1978 for 3 years. Then I quit for a year. Waitress, really enjoyed that. Then I was sort of enticed to come back and dance.
Yeah.
And did go back and dance with Anna Wyman for about another year.
Yeah.
And then I ended up very, very sick with an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And I'm very vocal about this. Yeah. Most people know. And it was interesting because at the time too, there were some dance people that I knew, right? And going way back, that were saying, we don't think you should go back. And I had wonderful experiences with Anna's company too, but I was not the right person to be there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt trapped. Anyways, I got very ill. Again, we're going to those days. Like it is so important for dance. Whoever is in charge of dance, right? There's a healthy body weight. And then there's an unhealthy body weight. And the unhealthy body weight being pushed on anybody, whether it's now or then. Yeah. The possibility of what damage you're going to do to a human being. Yeah. Right? And I was, when I finally went into the hospital with it, when I realized I just cannot be handling this, I was ready to commit suicide. I was like, I can't live like this anymore. No. I had known what it was like to live without it. Yeah. And not be anorexic. So I knew what I was missing. And my doctor, an internist who had been working with me, and I'd seen a psychiatrist, said, you're trying to just make it work while I was dancing too. And, and again, looking quite amazing from a dance perspective.
That's the thing.
I'm a teeny little thing, a powerhouse dancer. Yeah. So at the same time, you're constantly being praised and and loving that side of it, but you're physically and mentally kind of dying inside, right? Because that's the other thing, right? It's not, calories aren't just, for weight, it's your mental state, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
And that's nobody to blame. It's just was.
It's the system,
It's a system. And I think that's where then you have a situation where that system is not working for someone else. Somebody else can go in there and be strong and not get, whatever. And I was very young, right? I just went straight from high school into dancing all the time. And 1 year of Ryerson, but then going to Lake Bronx. So you're very young. Weren't those years of kind of growing up between 18 and 21, which a lot
so much happens.
Either being in a really good program like Modus, for instance, or going to university, or going, right? They're growing up years. So I didn't have that necessarily. And just a very interesting period, but I got over it. And so as hard as all of that was, I am one of the statistics that it worked. I became healthy again, and I always knew I wanted to have children. I wanted to carry on. And after that, then I met Judith Marcuse after I kind of finished with, whatever, and connected with her and danced with her for almost 10 years.
Right.
But one of the things that was really great about Judy was when she asked me to join the company, I'd been in a project with her at the Premier Dance Theatre then at Harbourfront, and now it's called The Flat.
Oh, right.
So Marcuse had this piece where it was 5 nights of all different companies around Canada that were performing in this opening every night, but this piece that she had was in it every night. So a different company would be sharing, and it was like, wow, okay, I can't believe I'm back. And when she asked, to join the company, I said to her, well, this is what my past has been. My weight is unpredictable because my body is getting healthy again. And so I'm yo-yoing or whatever. And you can never say to me, I need to lose weight.
Yeah.
If I can trust that you will never say that to me, I'm willing to take this risk. And of course, she never did. And then, a year and a half, year goes by, my body starts to stabilize, right?
Yeah.
And then you are who you are as in your healthy way.
Yeah.
So so many paths, right? It depends on who you meet.
It so depends. Definitely after I had my child, like the disordered eating, I think it had been there all along, and it just really bloomed. But all the things people say to you over the years. And I remember being like so tiny and so tired, and I was drinking like those Boost shakes. It was the only thing I could get down. And the praise, and you're just like, oh my God, I'm dying. But okay, I guess this is good. Okay. Just realize how important it is to be supportive.
Be careful, be supportive, and women being supportive of women, right?
Yeah.
This was not where it was just men like pushing, not at all, right?
Oh, no, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And I think dance is somewhat, and probably I'm assuming maybe gymnastics and rhythmic gymnastics or whatever, but dance, because so many of us start so early, and the passion and the system, right? So I'm a firm believer that people finish their training after high school. There needs to be something that they're doing, still dancing or whatever, but it needs to be in an environment too where they are able to grow and, learn who they are also as they're shifting into adulthood, because you might feel like you're really mature and everything you're doing, but the expectations of being an adult are very different than the expectations of being 18 or 17. And you have to be prepared for that. So I'm assuming and hoping, if you're going to an intensive dance program after high school, right, that isn't maybe associated with the type of institution, or you're not taking a gap year, or you're not whatever, that is being integrated. Also, you have to be able to stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself once you head into the dance world. And I would say I was a product of training and the times, right? Sexism, misogyny, like it's what one grew up with during that time. You were not empowered.
God, no.
You were also brought up, and I'd say my parents necessarily didn't do this, but society, and it's still there, where you are as a woman or as a female identifying person, however, you are a bit less than the male, right? Yeah. So that stops you from being able to stand up for yourself.
Well, and there's a whole shut up and dance.
Well, exactly.
Right?
And you realize now what you would be just like, well, fuck it. Out we go. Like it's not the process of supporting people as they're going through the different stages of their lives.
Yeah.
And I think you saw some of that with people in the workshop that you had yesterday, right? Yeah. Hearing some of their stories as seniors, what they're feeling, and about change, right?
You know, making body parts, which is the solo that I made during the pandemic. And that's going to be at the Cultch soon. But that your body's always changing. And just this like crazy idea that you should get your body back or get back to where, like, what body?
Yeah.
It's literally going to be changing the whole time you're alive.
Absolutely. And when you say in your piece, did you get your body back? Did you get your body back? Did you get that? Like how that resonates for women, and especially when you've had children.
Yeah. If you had $1 for every time somebody said, did you get your body back? Or are you working on getting your body back? I mean, the number of times it was like, that last 10 pounds.
I could imagine with yourself, like, oh, you were so skinny and tiny, you'll get back to anyways, right? But it's the comments that I think as a parent too, you realize how they just stick with children.
Oh, I know.
Right? And it's interesting. But you know what? And then meeting up with you, we get back to that after I danced with Judy for 3 years. I had Joseph, my son, who's now 36, went back and danced with her company for a few years, and then knew I wanted to have another baby, had Rebecca, and then didn't think I was going to dance after that. I thought this was it. And it felt like walls were closing in on me a bit right after that, because it's like, okay, what? Because I also don't remember having at that time a lot of fellow dance friends who had children.
There weren't many.
I remember with Joseph in particular, it was like Barbara and Jay, right? They had their Joseph, who was a year older.
Right.
And Judy had her daughter, Rachel, but there wasn't like a lot. So it was feeling a little closed in. And then I just really exercised and felt one to do that. And then this project with Judith Garrian, I'd seen her perform and was like, who is this beauty? And it was like, I'm going to audition. And that started, I would say, a good 8 years of independent work and commissioning.
That's right. Who are some of your favorite commissions? Because I do remember seeing so many shows.
I would say that all of the work that I commissioned there was a huge amount. It was in project work. But it was also, just so you know, too, that at that time, you couldn't commission as a dancer. You had to be a choreographer sort of doing. And that sort of changed, and I do give myself a bit of credit for that. Sylvain Brochu and we had a show.
You trailblazed, didn't you?
Yeah, that shade where we were kind of like, well, we've been doing this, and we can't apply for a grant, but somebody graduating from SFU seeing their choreographer can.
Well, there's
Not
the whole
that they
thing.
shouldn't be able to do that.
That's the whole thing about, I was on a panel about pay equity for dancers, and that idea about dancers, you're just interpreters. You're just and it's complete bullshit, because it is a massively difficult craft and artistry and creativity. And I just think it goes to that preconception.
Absolutely. Preconception, and also the dismissing.
Yes.
Just actually how in control dancers internally know their artistry.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing the negative aspects of this now in many ways, is the hierarchy.
Yeah.
When all the years that I was dancing, including the independent, which was why we fought to go, hey, I'm sorry. I think the jury's going to want to see our application and explain to me why we can't. This hierarchy of the choreographer, where again, the choreographer, and good on them, right? But there's a lot of dancers and a lot of people who are as engaged and have put as much artistry and blood, sweat, and tears into their work. And we're not hearing those voices as much. But it's also the hierarchy. They were just always the step above. Not that they're not generous or not. Like, it was just one of the things that as a dancer, a straight dancer, that's what the sort of system was. So it's interesting now. It's great where you see, people co-choreographing together, or a wonderful collective like Oral Collective. Yeah. All doing it together. They were just up here performing for me, with the BC Movement Arts. And after they did a run, I sat to them and said, there's something about you guys, and I've got it now. Now I understand what it is I feel that is so different. It's total equality, not just as artists choreographing and dancing, but also as male, female, or I don't mean to be gender insensitive, but the patriarch, there isn't this patriarchal feel or, in some cases matriarchal feel. It is like, wow. It felt so good. And I felt so good as a 67-year-old mother and grandmother now that, wow, how positive a direction like this is going and how important I feel that direction needs to be really supported.
Yeah.
And start breaking down in many ways the kind of old way.
Yeah. And I feel like those artists too, they're healthier. They're enjoying themselves more. I mean, I was talking to somebody recently, just couldn't believe I was telling them this. Is like when you were injured, I remember working for choreographers, you'd never mention you were injured because you would get fired.
That's right.
So, you know, you just pop on the film and just going out there and torturing yourself instead of like if we were working in a way where we didn't feel like we're, I don't know, afraid all the time. And also you made me think of, I will mention no names, but, you know, now there's more of a practice that when you are in creation and the creation is coming from the dancers, as well as the choreographer, that is acknowledged.
It's acknowledged.
And that's
now,
pretty
absolutely.
recent. Like I remember thinking, oh, wow, they're really going to say that was their, okay. I kind of remember making up all those steps.
Yeah,
So,
And you see that more and that change and that acknowledgement and good. And also with a lot of choreographers been doing it for a long time that they've shifted into saying that too, right?
Yeah,
So
acknowledge
it's,
what's really going on. I think it's important to just talk about this stuff because the hope is that people, you myself included, are going to keep dancing.
Oh, absolutely.
When I was at ballet school, it was like, oh no, 27 is the cutoff.
Absolutely.
That was it. Like what, they're going to shoot you behind the barn? And then, right? And then contemporary was like, okay, you got until you're about 34, 35.
Yeah.
And then I remember being 35 and being like, oh no.
No, for
and
sure.
now I'm 50 and I'm just
And
like,
you're still, and it's like all the different stages of what you're doing, you know, and you're such a wonderful example of that. And there's many artists, right, that are doing it, is that you have to embrace the age that you're at.
yeah.
And enjoy it and enjoy its creativity because it's bringing a whole bunch of things that you didn't have before. Maybe you have less of what was before, but again, you're going to have something that, and if it's honest, it's so wonderful watching.
I love watching
dance. Age.
I love watching all the different stages. I mean, I do love watching like real grown-ups. I guess when I say grown-ups, big air quotes around that.
Yeah.
I saw Louise Albert recently, and I just was like, oh my God, she's 63. And my friend laughed at me because I said, I'm only 50.
Yeah, exactly. But
You know?
again, that mentality of it, because a lot of, I don't know, the category of mid-career established, right? Like a lot of dance artists and choreographers / performers who we think are youngish, they're pushing 40 or they're 40 and they have children and they have, right?
Yeah.
So that concept of being able to carry on, like it feels like it is breaking
Yeah.
a bit, right? But what's so interesting when you go back and how the pressure, and I think still with ballet and with,
It's still there.
It's still there. But at the same time that they're saying you're going to end here, it doesn't matter. You put all your life into it, all this money into it, whatever, and never, ever any concept. How then do you help them financially, emotionally to support? And that's where Joyce Ann Sidimus years ago with the Dancers Transition Center, that's what she was noticing.
Yeah.
And then this Dancer Transition Center started to help people make a transition because when I did stop dancing, I was 45. Rebecca's in elementary school, Joseph's in high school. My husband, has never had like a big fat job, right? We're struggling to make everything. I would not have been able to go to school for 2.5 years if I hadn't had this funding from the Dancers Transition Center. So I was able to go to Capilano for the arts entertainment program and really thought it was great, but knew that if I want to kind of present and manage at a level that kind of my dance was, I needed to learn business, real business. And I went to BCIT and did post-diploma program. But with that, having this money for the tuition and some subsistence, it meant I was able to do that. So you think back and you just think of all the artists that just fell through the cracks. And
totally.
I remember Joyce Ann saying people would turn to alcohol or turn to because so much of your life. So it feels there's more awareness now. Like one of the things that I felt was, seeing, hey, it can be an expense in budgets with Canada Council and all that for childcare.
Yes.
Way back when I went and danced with Judith Garay, right? It was 1990. We were talking, I think.
I want to say like 93, 94.
Nobody was talking about daycare. Judith Garay paid my daycare for Rebecca.
She did? I didn't know that. You know what? Because I have to acknowledge that that's a big deal. Because I was told by the Canada Council, my officer, that I was TCP, Terra Cheyenne Performance. We were the first to put it in our budgets.
Brilliant. Yeah.
We didn't ask for permission. Yeah. Apparently I never heard the pushback. There was a little pushback, but it quickly got like, no. This.
Right.
So I think we really need to shout out to Judith Garay for doing that because, I mean, I can't hire dancers and know that they're paying childcare, so therefore they're netting $4 an hour.
Yeah,
that's not cool.
Yeah. And I remember like saying to Judy, it's going to be hard for me to afford to do this because of, you know, my day. And I said, it won't be all the time because Rebecca would just kind of go everywhere. And Joseph was in school and she, you know, didn't have children and doesn't have children. Yeah. And there was no discussion. She said, sure, why don't you at the end of the gate, will it work if you just let me know how much it was and I'll pay you?
Amazing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That stuck with me.
Absolutely.
You know, and especially the not having to barter or argue about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, of course.
Of course. Yeah, of course. And we need to keep people dancing. Mm-hmm. If we lose everybody when they have children or become caregivers of whoever, we're going to lose all these great brains and talent. And
that's right.
So then you came back recently and danced again.
I did.
How was that?
You know, a very interesting process. And that was in it was in December of the first year of COVID. And it was just before everything got shut down, the night of our opening. That's just the timing.
Were you?
So what I was going to, you know, sort of say with that is one of the reasons it happened that I did decide maybe I should dance again, see what it's like, do a solo, because it was fitting into a project that I'd done. When I stopped dancing, I was 45. There was no emotion that I was like, I was warming up and going like, I'm done.
Oh, really? It was clear.
Yeah, it was that clear. It was like I was in the theater. I was sharing a show with Alan Kasia and Karen, myself, for the first Chutzpah Festival. Yeah. And one of the things I've always loved with dancing, I've always equally loved the process, the rehearsal process, being in a studio, right? And especially I was doing all the solo work, right? Yeah. So I loved being in the studio and running solos and working. And when I was warming up, I was realizing I'm only getting excited about this show now.
Oh,
it's done. Yeah, because you're hardly really in your career. You're not on stage very much.
No, it's mostly
you have to be
mostly warming up, dealing with the things.
So my last show, I ended up doing a video kind of film in Prague with Daniel Conrad.
Oh, right.
And Crystal Pike choreographed. So myself and Emily and Jay and Crystal were the Canadian component going, and then there were about 6 dancers from Prague. Yeah. And we were there for a month and it was so much fun. And that was my last, sort of dancing. Yeah. But one of the things that I felt was unfinished was I had these solos that I really liked. So 3 in particular. And they ended with me, right? That all these solos, they ended with me. Yeah. And that I wanted to try to pass them on. So I just thought, so I applied, I reached out to some dancers. I got money to do 3 of them. I originally wanted 4. I got money to do 3. Talked to the choreographers. So they were Alan Kasia, Peter Bingham, and late Ted Robinson.
Yeah, I remember that solo.
Yeah, I asked them, I said, what do you think? I would like to find a way to remount these, put them onto the dancers, and then you will have time with them. And they were totally game. And I had Vanessa Goodman, who did the piece with Ted Robbins.
Yeah.
And Lavonna Ellis, that did Peter Bingham's from Walking Away. And my daughter, Rebecca, who did Alan Kasia's piece. And so we were presented then after it's sort of done, and it was at the time too when I didn't quite understand the new Canada Council, right? So my grant was from creation to production or whatever to perform it to realization. So it meant, I have to really get this performed as opposed to just do it, give them and let them go and So anyway, so I did that. But I got funding from Canada Council and BC Arts Council to do these, right? And the dancers were paid nicely. They also, I did not have to pay for their work. The work is theirs. And a wonderful passing on generational too, right? Not just with me, but also with the choreographers. And they were all experienced, right?
Yes.
But definitely have a complete few generations back than myself. And also the choreographers, because I'm of the same. Alan's a little bit younger than me. Peter's older. Ted was a bit older. So we were of that generation. So it was really very gratifying. So then we, the dance center presented us. Something, and I've been talking about maybe I should do something. People are kind of encouraging me, why don't you do it? So I did. So Serge Benathon, I asked Serge to do a solo for me. We worked on it up here in Sointula.
Oh, gorgeous.
And the process was wonderful, very sensitive. It was really interesting for me to get back and to be moving sort of like that. It took a long period because luckily I'd been one of these dancers that when I stopped dancing at 45, I could still do everything. It wasn't a physical thing at all.
Right.
So it was interesting then sort of shifting. And I've always been strong and kind of in shape for whatever age I am. But one of the lovely things about it, which I think goes back to what we were talking about with aging, the artistry. Hadn't gone. And I noticed that quickly as we were rehearsing, which was like, it's really interesting. And also I was worried about, am I going to be able to remember choreography? Am I going to be able to do that? That hadn't. That was all still amazing. There. So it was lovely. And this lovely solo that I really, really liked. And, the whole process. And it was to be performed. We're already opening night, 5:00. We find out it's shut down.
Oh my God.
But what it was interesting about that wasn't shut down. And Vanessa and Lavana and Rebecca, oh my God, what a dream team. The support from them, right? I remember Rebecca saying to me, I just wanted to burst into tears because how it was this was here. So now you're not sort of doing it. But she said, I saw you were so stoic about it. And you have to be, right? It's like, I'm not arguing, with
what are you going to do?
Waited a night and gone the other night, hindsight. You can't. Everybody made their decisions the way the organization needed to make their decisions. But the big fear for me when we were negotiating and talking about presenting this with the dance center, when we knew this COVID had been in for a while, we weren't sure where it was sort of going. Everybody was starting to, let's live stream, right? Let's stream it, let's video it. Well, one of the least interesting things for me, and it's just my personal taste, is dance on film. Unless it is really done well, or it really is just an archival recording of a show. But also because I didn't grow up with being recorded. Luckily, Mark Hughes has some stuff, has a lot of stuff like from old videos. But no, we don't have videos really of that time. So it really was, how do you feel now, right? When you're performing? And that's your memory.
Yeah.
But also just being so worried about what am I going to look like? Like I just knew that I'm going to look way better live on stage from a distance for the audience to watch than in video, right? And I wanted, I would say, and it's another, again, I have had over the years and sometimes still can issues with body dysmorphia.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what the reality of what I look like on 100%. Film. It doesn't really matter. So we got it recorded, of course. Rebecca and Lavana, looked amazing. And again, we're talking like 20 years since I've been dancing. And I saw some of my footage up close. And I just went, I can't do it. I'm sorry. We have to take it out. And they're like, Mary-Louise, you look fantastic. It doesn't matter. Like, I can't do it. So we compromised. Yeah. And if you were to look at that showing, everybody else has some close-ups. Chris Randall did a lovely job of videotaping. Has close-ups, distance, all of that. My one is from the back of the stage looking at the whole performance.
Right.
And it was because I didn't get the chance to do it live first.
You didn't have the experience.
Because that's what was important for me. That's where that connection was. So if it just becomes on screen, it didn't make sense to me. It wasn't just about, I want to do a solo. I want to no. It was experience that physicality live with an audience.
Yeah.
And so it was, what I did realize, because again, you're thinking, maybe I'll start again and dance again. Loved working with Serge, and we go back.
Yeah.
Right? He was one of the first choreographers after I'd had Joseph when I went back to Judith Matthews. Mm-hmm. He was there choreographing for the company, and he had a piece with 4 of us, and I was one of them. And that's when I met, in 1989 or something, right? But I also realized it's just too much work.
This podcast is effing good.
To do it. Anyway,
it is a lot of work. Yeah.
I don't want to, if I just wanted to choreograph standing still in a spot, okay, sure, that's fine. But that's not me. I'm fidgety. I move around. So it was like, okay, well, at least now I know I don't want to maybe start another solo dance career at 65. I was 65 then. Yeah. So at 65, 67, right? And so I knew that with myself. Yeah. But it was, I would say that, damn COVID.
Would you do that solo again?
Show again.
Would you, if you had the chance to perform it?
If I had the chance to perform it in like when people can have like salons. Yeah. Intimate sharing. And if there was others, doing a similar sort of thing, and it was part of a sharing thing, maybe. But even that solo, right? We know Serge's work, right? Yeah.
I can't imagine it was easy.
Well, it was good. And one of the things was somebody had said, like he didn't give me an old lady solo. There were moments, of course, that you sort of could do, but it was a lot of work at this age to do that. So it's not that I wouldn't want to maybe do it again at some point. I'm just not sure if I want to do all the work to get there to do it. Right?
I hear you.
Without injury,
No, that's not worth it.
So sometimes, memories that's what they are, right? It also is just a testament that we all know how much hard work it is to be a dancer, to be performing, right? Yeah. And and I like the fact that I'm this age and I can go for long walks and I don't have aching hips and I don't have that part of where it took a lot of work to get sort of to the point of just not looking like an idiot doing it, to also make sure I wasn't going to be injured. So I really loved dancing and performing. If I was a choreographer, I might have carried on in another way or coming back and choreograph. Yeah. But I'm not. And it wasn't ever an interest for me. The interest for me was physically connecting and emotionally with moving, with performing.
Wow.
So I have a sob COVID story.
Now I
remember a friend of mine who's a well-known choreographer in Toronto, and she just said, Mary-Louise, I have to say this. You got royally fucked.
Yeah, you did. Right? You did.
But I'm glad people, understood that. Yeah, but back to when we were talking also about eating disorders and body, right? That it can do a lot of damage. So I was also a bit surprised, but I couldn't leave my head when it was like, you can use me on film as long as it's just the back.
Yeah, yeah.
And also it's just so interesting going back after 20 years, right? There wasn't this gradual sort of change of aging. I mean, in many ways, like I love aging, but the work to go back and perform, it's like, that's all I would be able to do.
Yeah, you can't do a bunch of other stuff. And now you are doing a bunch of other stuff.
That's right, yeah.
Which you always have been. You're one of the busiest people I've known. Running the Chutzpah Festival for how long?
It was 15 years.
Was it 15 years?
2019 was my last Chutzpah Festival. Well, I ended up staying kind of to the end of March to help Jessica out a bit more. Yeah. And then COVID hit, right? Yeah. So that was, wow. And then poor Jessica too. But in some ways, her and I have talked about this too, because we've become friends and we have a project we're doing together in April.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And so, for her it gave her some chance to go in a little bit slower and make her mark, right? And you see the wonderful work that she's doing. Yeah. So it's,
And now you're up here in Sointula.
Full time, yeah.
Full time.
Yeah.
But you've been presenting work up here since 2015.
That's right.
Right.
During the last few years of running Chutzpah, I was kind of piggybacking with the activities of what I wanted to do with BICMIS.
Yeah.
And to build some capacity of or history of what BC Movement Arts we do in order to stand on our own 2 feet.
Sure.
When I left Chutzpah too, but it also really balanced up nicely because it brought Chutzpah up to this north of island.
Yeah.
It brought this range of activities. And then after I knew that when I left the Rothstein and Chutzpah, it was just time, right?
Yeah.
It was just 15 years because I also knew I had another chunk of work with me and I really wanted to just focus on dance.
Yeah.
So Chutzpah was multidisciplinary, which was great, but I wanted to just focus on dance. And for the last 4 years of running the festival and the theater, I was actually working remotely from here. So I've been almost 50-50, right?
Amazing.
So I was getting really used to it. Well, most of the stuff I do anyway.
Yeah, you're in front of a computer.
You're in front of a computer. So I was doing that and then knew that, okay, it took a time, will I want to live here? Will my husband want to live here? It is remote. It's different. It's not living in Campbell River. So after spending those years, I did, but I also knew that I wasn't ready to not be doing what I want to do. So, that was when I moved here. Then BC Movement Arts, because we had gotten one grant before, a community grant. I was eligible to apply into the professional dance stream. Yeah. I was eligible to apply with Canada Council with all that. So, we've been lucky with getting development money from Canadian Heritage to be doing that. So it's project-based. So again, as you know, too, right? It's so many project-based that if I don't get one of these grants next year or the year after, it's gone, right?
Yeah.
I don't have another budget. I'm not personally putting in a lot of money to make this work. But so far, it's been really good. So BC Arts, Canada Council, Canadian Heritage was project money. And I think part of it was because, I'd been building where we had done things here. Yeah. So we had proven I'd already had this relationship since 2014 with some wonderful cultural leaders in Alert Bay, one in particular, Andrew Cramner of the Namakas Nation. And so it wasn't just I'm going to do this. It was we've been doing this in this sort of way. And I think good on them too. I don't think it was question whether I'd be able to pull it off.
If anybody can pull this off.
No, but there's other people too. It was okay, let's do this. So far, this now, because of COVID, it got pushed, of course, back. So we're now into our second season of this dance series. And my residencies, I did it last year. I have money for this year with the residencies. I do have my confirmed funding for my third season, right? And then we just see, and hopefully, BC Arts opens up operating at some point. But again, right?
Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun.
That's a whole other Tara talking
That's going to be some talking shit. Okay.
Yeah. And not just for me, I'm more concerned, with artists that, again, we have this, we think they're young, right? It's a new person.
But they're not.
They're not new.
They've been working their ass off
for 25 years and has been going, right? So many of the companies, and they're not new.
Well, it's that whole thing. I mean, I talk about Hannah Gatsby, the stand-up comic, all the time. She just came on the scene. Yeah. Oh no, she's been doing it for 15 years before that. It's important to point that out, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's
amazing. And you have an audience of people who are into dance.
Well, they've been kind of coming for a while, right?
Yeah.
Here's this small community that, have seen quite a bit, I've seen Shay Kubler, Donald Sales. We've had Ellen Kasia, Rebecca, 605.
Yeah.
A range of styles.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
So we perform here. We go to Alert Bay, Port McNeill. This year, it's actually Port Hardy. And depending on the production, this year there's 2 productions that are also in Campbell River. So
amazing.
Yeah. And then we can hardly, I'm looking so forward
we can't wait.
To you.
We can't wait.
Yeah.
We can't wait. We're really excited. The residency, I've been up here, got 1 more day, 2 more days of residency up here in this gorgeous studio up here. It's beautiful. Thank you, Mary-Louise.
You're welcome, Tara.
That was so fun. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Mary-Louise, for such an amazing conversation. It was so nice to hang out with you. I look forward to doing it again soon. And please get in touch. We're on Instagram, Tara Cheyenne TCP, Facebook, Tara Cheyenne Performance, Or you can email us, info@terracheyenne.com. Talking Shit with Tara Cheyenne is a production of Tara Cheyenne Performance, with original music by Mark Stewart, also edited and produced by the very same Mark Stewart. And if you are listening to this before May 3rd, 2023 in the Gregorian calendar, you have time to get a ticket to come and see my show, Body Parts, at the Cultch here in Vancouver. Body Parts is an exploration of body image, which is quite fitting for this particular episode, I think. Would love to see you there. You can get tickets at the Cultch website.
This podcast is effing good.